If there's one thing that I love discussing with you guys more than anything else, it's builds in turn-based strategy RPGs, and boy howdy does Dark Deity 2 have a lot of options for build crafting. My name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman, and on this episode of Steal These Builds, we have 3 very fun options for you. Let's begin. Hello everyone, if you enjoy what I do, including my coverage of turn-based strategy RPGs such as Dark Deity 2, then a like on this video and a subscription to the channel would be very much appreciated. Also, I know everyone's getting hit hard right now, but if you would like to directly support the channel and what I do, you can check out my YouTube memberships and my Patreon linked down below as well. It helps massively, especially right now, and yeah, I appreciate all y'all who help out and support the channel. You mean the world to me. Now, on today's episode of Steal These Builds, who are we going to be talking about? The 3 characters we're discussing today are, in no particular order, Calith, Alden, and Aya. 3 mages to talk about today, all of which have very different roles and are quite fun to use. And I think we'll go through from lowest level to highest level just because that's what I feel like doing. So let's talk about Aya. Aya is a very interesting character wherein she wants to actually be able to be in the thick of the fight enough to get status effects on her, or be close to allies on the front line who have status effects on them so that she can absorb it with her Demonic Call personal skill. This allows her to absorb bleed and poison stacks from allies within 3 tiles, plus 13 light stacks of each. This way, she can stack that with her Demon Blood passive, where blind, poison, bleed, and weak effects are reversed. So they'll actually be empowering her and healing her rather than crippling her, which is awesome. Now, obviously, this is a little bit of a weird situation to try to find yourself in because Aya is a mage, and mages are quite squishy unless you're going to be making them like a Relic Knight, and that's not really a role that she wants to fill with her personal stats. So, in trying to figure out what to do with Aya, I settled on actually taking her through the Scholar and Lore Master tree. And I think it worked out pretty dang well, so let's talk about what we have going on here. Abilities first, weapons, rings, etc. You know how this works. She has her Demon Blood passive that is very, very nice, allows her to assist her allies very well, which is great because this is an assist build. Building Knowledge allows her to get more fortitude every time she uses mana, which is good because she doesn't have very good fortitude right now, but that can build over the course of a chapter. And then Making History, allies within 2 tiles expend 15% less mana. Just Making History alone makes it worthwhile to have at least one character in this class, and really any support build is happy to have it. So I think having a character that really wants to be able to assist their allies by draining status effects off of them to then deal more damage themselves is very happy to be nearby and give allies less mana expenditure. We then of course have Demonic Call upgraded to have increased stacks and reduced mana cost just to make it a little bit more efficient overall. Then we have Phase, of course, from Scholar, teleports an adjacent ally to a tile up to 6 tiles away. I chose to make this self-cast targetable just in case I really needed to get her into or out of a situation, maybe swap her to another side of the board where there's some characters who have some status effects on them, things like that, just a little utility piece. And then Ancient Writ, of course, read from your tome, granting an ally 46 mana. This has been increased to be 1/3 range, and it's removing status effects from people who it targets. So it's not always needed when you can just Demonic Call, but sometimes if you really need to be able to give someone some mana, then you can at least still have Aya do her role of removing status effects on that one target with this. So it's a little redundant, but it has actually been more useful than you would think. Then, by being in Lore Master, we have the Breaker, deal 32 damage to all units, including allies within 2 tiles, and Rousing History, apply 18 light vulnerable to up to 5 enemies within 2 tiles. I didn't use these as much, just Phase and Ancient Writ from Scholar are so good on top of Demonic Call. This was the core of what I was going to be doing with this Aya build. But if you do need to just put out a bunch of damage, or you need to just soften up a bunch of enemies, you do have these in your back pocket, and that is nice. But you'll note I have no upgrades on them because I was not using them that much. Moving over to look at our weapon, we have the Griffin Crest, 12 power, 0 crit, 110 accuracy, and 1 weight, with 2 modifiers on it. Attack twice at 60% damage, and power +2. So the idea being here that I want to take good advantage of Aya's good speed, which we'll talk about the stat spread in a second here, to be able to get as many attacks as possible at as high a power as possible to really chunk something down when it comes time for Aya to start blasting. And with things like Demonic Call and Demon Blood making all of those different status effects increase increase Aya's damage, you can actually, even when you have your attacks cut down to 60% damage, be chunking things, which is really, really nice. I wanted to have an option here for this support build to still be able to slap when I need it to, because every character in Dark Deity 2 should have some level of damage capability. You will find times where you need it, and this is the best way that I could find with this build to make that happen for Aya. As far as her rings are concerned, we have the Diplomat Ring. Defeating a foe grants plus 25 dodge for 1 turn. So again, if we really have to get into the thick of it and blast something, we do have the ability to get some more dodge out of it, which is great because our, again, defense and fortitude are not great. And the Archmage Ring, gain 1 ability range to all abilities with higher than 1 base range. This is obviously just great. It allows us to have Ancient Writ be cast from further away. It's not the most important thing, to be perfectly honest. I think it does actually allow you to phase someone farther away as well. Now I think about it, I should probably test that. But just having that utility for even just Ancient Writ, let alone phase, is very nice for sure. I think it actually works on Demonic Call as well. It takes a little bit of testing. I really kind of threw these rings on Aya just to give her something to work with, but they wound up working out pretty well. Of course, as always, with all of the builds that I do, I'm sure there's ways that you could wind up refining this further, but I like to give an overall idea of what a build can be, and then let you guys refine it for yourselves however you so choose. More fun that way, I think, for everyone involved. Now, as far as the stats are concerned, there's definitely a lot of swinginess going on here. 55% HP is not huge in this game, but it's certainly enough to give a little bit of bulk. 60% on might and 60% on speed are quite nice, and as you can see, we have a lot of might and speed as a result. Again, making us pretty dodgy, making it pretty easy for Aya to actually deal some good damage when she starts to slap. Dexterity of only 23 is definitely not great based on that 35% growth, but when you have 4 attacks, you know, you're not really planning on attacking all that often anyway, so if you pick your targets, you should still be able to target stuff. The real problem here is the 10% defense and fortitude. Aya will fold if anything gets a hold of her, physical or magical. The only saving grace that you have is building knowledge, giving you extra fortitude as you do spend mana. So by the end of a map, Aya can take some magical hits, but defense, she's literally always going to be a prime target for the enemy. So you do have to watch that, but she should pretty much always be behind your lines, giving buffs and support to your allies anyway, so it's not the end of the world. We then do have 50% mastery growth leading up to 26 at level 39. Perfectly solid. You don't really need mastery on this class. That's what's interesting about it. Like, as a support class, it's not really using mastery all that much. Like, get some benefits for Ancient Writ, and then like the Breaker can deal more damage, but it's not the most vital thing, and 50% is still very solid. And then 45% luck growth. Perfectly good. Not the most important thing for any sort of mage character that's doing support roles, but hey, again, having the extra accuracy and dodge never hurts. So this is an absolutely phenomenal support build. It's a really good way to put a mage character that you're not really using for any other focused role, to put them into your party and still have a role for them. That's just what Scholar and Lore Master are good at. And because all of my other mages were doing other much more particular roles, it seemed like a decent fit for Aya. She's probably not the best character for this type of build. Arthur is probably the best, just because he can use all those support abilities and then, you know, pop off with Lunar Reeve, but that's just Arthur being Arthur. That's not really a knock against Aya. So I really enjoy this build, and I recommend that you give it a shot if you feel like checking it out. Moving on from Aya, though, to my wife herself, Calith, and this, we have a Mystic Necromancer thing going on. This is a Geomancer Necromancer type of build, and it's definitely one of the more odd builds out there. I really enjoy it. I think it's a lot of fun, but I know in particular when Link King and I were doing our collab videos, he had questions, so we'll talk about what we have going on here. The whole idea with this build is to maximize Calith's personal affinity for blind stacking. And that affinity comes from her 2 personal abilities, Light Absorption and Crystal Refraction, so let's talk about them. Light Absorption, blind stacks within 2 tiles, increase defense and fortitude by 0.1. Not a huge amount on its face, but it's everything within 2 tiles, and it's per stack of blind on everything, so you can actually get some pretty decent defense and fortitude going there. Then combine that with Crystal Refraction, her personal active skill. Apply 27 stacks of heavy blind to 4 random enemies within 2 tiles. So now we're starting to get somewhere, right? Let's see, we can do some quick math here. That is 108 stacks of heavy blind which I need to pull out the calculator for this one. I'm terrible with common basic mental math. Let me take a look here. Looking at a nice solid boost of around 11 defense and fortitude, which is a pretty significant jump for what is otherwise a fairly squishy mage class. At least you would think that it's squishy, but we'll talk about that in a second. Then, of course, because we have gone through Geomancer and Necromancer, we have a little bit of an eclectic mix of passives. Astral Blessing, spending mana, applies 4 light block to 2 allies within 2 tiles. And then Soul Steal, enemies dying within 2 tiles grant 20 mana. So you might be starting to see what the idea here is, right? We want to get Calith into the thick of the enemies, pop Crystal Refraction. Any allies around her will get light block, which, I mean, if we're in the front line, then there should be at least some tanks around who want the block anyway. We'll make it harder for the enemy to hit us. We'll get more defense and fortitude for our troubles, and then anything that dies on the following turns will give us mana back so we can do it all over again. To facilitate that, we've got Crystal Refraction buffed with 2 different nice little abilities here. Increase the number of targets that the ability affects by 1, that's why we're getting 4, and then reduce the mana cost of the ability by 15 to make it a very smooth 35, which is very nice. Very easy to spam this, especially with Soul Steal. Then, because we went through Geomancer, we have Star Surge, which is just a phenomenal ability. Summon an ally from up to 6 tiles away, dealing 19 damage to enemies adjacent to the ally's original tile. Logic being, if Calith is going to be trying to push onto the front line anyway, she's likely going to be at the front of the formation, and if there's a turn where she doesn't need to be crystal refracting to blind things or whatever, she can help facilitate moving the line forward, maybe dealing damage to stragglers by using Star Surge, which is great. We then have Moonlight, heal an ally within 3 tiles for 21, and we have that buffed with a debuff remover and a mana reduction, so it's only 30 mana. This is just great to have as an option. The more characters that you have with potential healing is, like, the better. It's not a huge heal, but it also doesn't need to be a huge heal. Just to patch somebody up and make sure that they're going to live another turn until you can get a bigger heal on them, that's more than enough. You then have Animate, reanimate fallen foes, creating a zombie at 79% efficiency with some mana reduction as well. This is just nice to have to be able to throw out some extra bodies on the board. It's not the most commonly used thing for this build, but in combination with my Arthur, who we're not talking about in this particular video, who's also a Necromancer, you can get a lot of zombies out there, which is a very fun time. Finally, we have Drain Life. Drain Life from a foe, dealing 25 damage and healing for the same amount. So this is just a nice little finish an enemy off, get yourself some health back if you need it type of deal. Again, not the most needed thing. Calith really wants to get in there and just cripple the enemy and let everyone else clean up while she tanks. And she does a very good job with that. We'll talk about why in a second. But this is still here if you really need a little bit of a self-heal or to finish off something nasty. As far as our weapons and rings are concerned, we have a Shimmering Vial, 14 power, 0 crit, 110 accuracy, and 1 weight, with power plus 3, and again, attack twice at 60% damage. This is just a nice way to keep dealing more damage to the enemy. If you can get any sort of like power buffs or take advantage of any sort of poison or anything on the enemy, you can do a lot of damage with this, even despite our relatively low might on this build. It's just a way to get some extra chip damage in there, even though this is really more of a tanky control type of setup. To facilitate that, we have the Dauntless Ring. Gain +1 defense and fortitude for every enemy within 2 tiles. So again, we're talking about like 10, 11 extra defense before. Now we're talking about maybe like 15, 16 extra defense, right? Depending on how many enemies are around, maybe more. And when we already have 22 defense and 26 fortitude, that can get very, very tanky very quickly. We then also have the Depth Ring, dodge increased by 50% of power. And while our power isn't phenomenal, we do get a nice dodge bump to that, which then also will build off the fact that we have heavy blind on enemies. So it is remarkably difficult to hit Calith as a Necromancer here. And then when you do hit her, she still is also incredibly tanky. It's just a very nice overall setup. As far as our stats are concerned, we have a beefy 60% HP growth, which means that we have 77 HP at level 42. Absolutely phenomenal. Definitely facilitates keeping this magic tank alive. 28 might with 55% growth. Not the most damage at all, but again, we're not looking to do a damaging build here. We have other characters for that. It's enough to do some chip damage, and that's all I need. 22 speed with a 30% growth. This is where things get a little rough, and it's part of the reason why I like the Shimmering Vial for that double attack, because we're not going to actually be doubling a lot of the time. So having a way to get some extra damage in there is definitely solid. As far as the defensive side of speed is concerned, it's really not that big of a deal, because again, we have so much extra dodge and defense and fortitude anyway. It's just kind of the thing that you have to deal with, and when you realize that Calith is definitely designed to be more of a tanky character. We do, however, have 60% dexterity with 32 at this current level, which is very nice, keeps us nice and accurate, occasionally gets us some crits too. And then 25% defense and 50% fortitude. Obviously, you're thinking, well, yeah, the 25% defense isn't great, but going through Geomancer, you do get a decent amount of defense, and then with all the buffs we have going on here, 22 is not what we're ever actually functionally dealing with. And then as any good mage class should be, it is definitely a very solid magical defense unit. You get plenty of fortitude, buffed even higher. These stats become very difficult for the enemy to deal with. The big thing, and I think one of the reasons that people scratch their heads with Calith a lot, is that she doesn't have great mastery. We only have 25% growth, which leads to 15 mastery here. She doesn't want to be a damage class, right? If you're using Calith trying to deal damage with abilities, you're doing it wrong. It's just not what she wants to be doing. She wants to be a control character. Calith is a blue mage in many, many ways, and you need to lean into that. She's not supposed to be out here throwing fireballs. She's supposed to be out here making sure that the enemy doesn't know what the hell is happening while they're trying to hit her, and then being shocked when they do finally get a punch through and find out that she's got magically reinforced rock hard abs, right? Like, that's what she wants to be doing. Finally, we do have the luck so we can actually get some dodges going and everything. Helps facilitate this overall tank build. I mean, what can I say? It's just good fun. She's not going to be standing on the front line and actually duking it out toe-to-toe with priority targets. Like, that's not really what she wants to be doing here. She wants to live long enough to disrupt the enemy and make them easy pickings for the rest of your army. And for all the different things that I've kind of theory crafted for Calith thus far, this is my favorite way to play her. And of course, you should be playing her because, my god, have you seen her? Finally, we're going to move on to what is actually probably my favorite build in the game, something that I've crowed about constantly. It is my favorite purple-haired boy from Dark Deity 1, Alden, as a Relic Knight. Yes, if you have not heard me singing the praises of Tank Alden going through to Relic Knight from Aegis, then you have not been listening to enough of my content, because boy howdy is this the way to play. So, what is the idea here? Very simple. You turn an Alden into an Aegis as soon as you have an Astral Coin, and then once you can promote to Relic Knight, you do, and he just becomes a monster. Part of the reason for that is the abilities that he does have. Team Tactics, deal 2 additional damage for every status effect on an enemy, and Aura Wave, apply 15 heavy weak stacks and 10 heavy vulnerable stacks to an enemy with the upgrades that make it so that he poisons when he uses this and increasing the range that he can do so at. This is a really nice way for him to just be able to say, no, I do not want to let a priority target overcome me. Aura Wave, making him deal more damage and taking even less damage from the enemy, is great, especially if you're trying to duel a boss. And Team Tactics is very solid as well if you're going to be throwing around any sort of like AoE debuffs, just making it so that Alden can hit a little bit harder, even though he often doesn't need to due to the ridiculous way that this class tree works. And we're going to talk about that right now. His 2 other passive skills are Reflection. Taking damage increases damage of next attack by 20%, so just gives him a little bit of a harder slapback, which is great. And then Unstoppable. Killing an enemy grants +6 defense and fortitude until next turn. And of course, yes, this does stack, as far as I'm aware. I've never really had the need to test it too much, because Alden is usually pretty unkillable anyway, but it certainly seems to, which is pretty great. As far as our other active skills are concerned, we have Relic Refraction. Apply 67 heavy blind stacks to an enemy within 2 tiles. I rarely use this. Sometimes it's useful with Calith, but like, we want to be getting hit. So if you're going for like a supporty kind of Aegis Relic Knight rule, cool. But that's not what we're doing here with Alden. This is probably my least used ability with him. Then we have the bread and butter Repulsor Shield, 35 mana, self-cast, 2 range max. Surround an ally with energy for 4 turns, reflecting 16 damage every time they are hit in combat. And of course, we have a mana reduction and a duration increase upgrade on here. This is what makes this class so ridiculous, because it's flat damage. Nothing can avoid this. If you get hit by an enemy and you have Repulsor Shield on you, they are taking 16 damage every time they hit you. And this also stacks. So with this amount of turns, you could potentially have an enemy be taking like anywhere from 48 to 64 damage per hit. And there's just nothing that they can do about that. It's ridiculously strong. And if you want to be able to buff up an ally, you can use it on them as well. It's not just a self-cast, which is nuts. Then for some active skills, we've got Blade Storm. Attack 3 times at 37% reduced power, and we do have better mastery scaling on this, so you can just get a bunch of free chunks in, which is very nice. And then Swirling Blades. Animate 4 blades for 4 turns, dealing 32 damage to adjacent enemies on turn start. So you just cast this on yourself and then run in and have anything that manages to somehow survive hitting you and getting punched back in the face by the Repulsor Shield actually just take even more damage. It's nuts. Now, of course, if these abilities weren't enough, we also have a bunch of nice equipment and stats to talk about, so let's do that. We do have on Alden the Great Sword, 19 power, 0 crit, 100 accuracy, and 4 weight, with plus 3 power, add 10% of current HP to unit power capped at 5. With this weapon, even though we are not stacking a lot of might on this build, and the goal is not to just be killing things with basic attacks, you can still actually slap pretty good, like especially once you get reflection going and everything. Like, you're able to deal damage here in melee that is going to make the enemy question if it's any way a good idea to try and hit you. And that's before we get into the rings. Plague Ring, taking damage reflects heavy bleed equal to 8% of max HP, just in case you need a little bit of extra to finish something off. And Hallowed Ring, waiting grants plus 5 defense and fortitude until the start of next turn. So, you walk up, you cast a Repulsor Shield on yourself, or maybe like a Swirling Blades or something like that. You hit wait, you get a bunch of defense, and you let the tanking begin. We then, of course, have an 85% HP growth, meaning we have a whopping 96 HP at level 44. This all but guarantees that Alden is never going to die. That's just so much to chew through when he already has great defenses. This is phenomenal. Might is only 45%, gives us 25 might. Again, this is not the point. The sword makes it so that our normal attacks do deal a good amount of damage, but we're standing there and letting the enemy break themselves upon our body. We don't need high strength to make that happen. Similarly, 30% speed growth leading to 22. This is good. This is actually exactly what we want. We want Alden to get doubled so that enemies bounce off the Repulsor Shield even more frequently. If I could willingly drop this lower, I would. Maybe there's even a ring that does that. I haven't looked. I probably should, because if we could just nuke our speed to nothing for some other benefit and then always get doubled by everything, that would be choice. Our dexterity, 20% growth, 18 dex. You're not going to hit super reliably. It's still possible, especially if you're playing on anything through like easy to deity. But again, you don't need to. The enemy's hitting you. You don't need to hit them. Oftentimes, you won't even have the chance to raise your sword. Now, of course, the big ones here, 55% defense growth, 55% fortitude growth, leading to 29 defense and 31 fortitude at this point in my playthrough. I mean, what is there that you can say, right? Like, you get the extra defense from Hallowed Ring. You can put block on with other characters. Like, this is more than enough, especially with this amount of HP, to just single-handedly stand in front of entire swathes of the enemy. Like, cover one side of the battlefield with just Alden and watch everything explode and him walk out relatively unscathed. Like, this is more than enough defensive stats before any other buffs to make him extremely reliable. We then have 40% mastery growth, leading to 25. This is fine. You really don't need mastery here. All it really does for you is, like, get you some extra Blade Storm. Like, great. That's good, but it's really not what you're going to be doing most of the time. Repulsor Shield just works flat as it is, and that's what you're doing 90% of the time. So cool, not a big deal, but it's there when you need it. And then 20% luck, leading to a whopping 4. We don't need luck here. Like, we're not trying to crit. We're not really trying to have accuracy or dodge either. Like, if there's a dump stat here for Alden, it's luck. He does not need this, so I'm perfectly happy to have him basically have none of it. As I'm sure you can imagine, looking at this build, and if you've seen me playing, even just with Aegis before you get to Relic Knight, even on Demonic, like, I'll throw some clips up here, like, Alden just destroys stuff, man, and Demonic is not kidding around. Like, enemies hurt there, and they are tanky, and yet Alden still just says lol, lamau, and watches as their brain explodes when they first hit him with their sword. Like, it's so awesome how strong this class is, and it's infinitely scalable. So long as you're continuing to level your defensive stats, all you need is the Repulsor Shield and then some marginally helpful rings and like a weapon. And it's like build already online. You can just optimize it from there, but you rarely even need to. And Alden, of all of the mages, definitely has, in my opinion, the best kit for this. Calith does have very good defensive stats. She does have the option to be a very solid Relic Knight, but I think because of what she wants to be doing with Blind, it's kind of anti-synergistic. And then as far as Arthur and Aya are concerned, their defensive stats aren't great. I've had people tell me that Arthur's the best Relic Knight because of Lunar Reeve, but I don't necessarily agree with that either. Like, if I'm using a Relic Knight to really come in and wreck shop, I want them to be repulsor shielding all the time. And then why would I want to be using mana on Lunar Reeve, right? Like, I can have Arthur doing something else using mana and then Lunar Reeving. Like, he's not tanky enough, in my opinion, to be the one to throw into the front line. With Alden, I can just send him out there and call it GG, right? It's awesome. So I love this build. If it's something that you haven't tried yet, I highly, 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 highly recommend that you do so. Even on Demonic, it facilitates so much successful gameplay. And with that said, my friends, that is my first 3 builds for my first ever Steal These Builds video for Dark Deity 2. I hope you all enjoyed. I always enjoy doing these videos. They're a ton of fun. They're fairly easy to put together. And I love the discussions that they cause to spring up in the comments. So if you do have any feedback about any of the builds I showed today, any suggestions about builds I should check out, or anything that you would like to share with other community members playing this game, please put all that down in the comments. It's always fun to see what y'all have to say. And yeah, optimize some stuff. Change some things around. Let me know if you try these builds and if you enjoy them. I love to hear that too. It's always a good time. But with that said, I'm going to wrap this one up here. My name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. I hope you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there. And remember, be good to each other, everybody. Bye now.